The first 30 picks of the 2024 NFL Draft is set, and we just have the Super Bowl left to go. One more game in the season before we turn our full attention to the NFL Draft. Today on this Mock Draft Monday, have another 2024 first round mock draft. Let's dive into it here, starting with the Chicago Bears, of course, at number 1. The discussion is always going to be Justin Fields versus taking a rookie quarterback. For me personally, it is a fairly easy decision at this point. With you picking first overall, you have a chance to kind of reset that quarterback clock. You're going to have to pay Justin Fields $40 million probably in the next contract. And has he proven to be that caliber of player? I personally don't think so. I think you're going to get another Daniel Jones type situation. I understand surrounding him with talent, what you could get trading down from this pick, but at some point, I think you need an elite quarterback to really be super successful in this league. And I think Caleb Williams has a good chance of potentially being that kind of player. I think he is going to be the first pick and definitely somebody that would kind of be that face of the franchise for the Chicago Bears. At number 2, we have the Washington Commanders. I also think that this is going to be an easy one. Drake May out of North Carolina. I think there's a good chance that Ben Johnson is the new head coach. You obviously have a new GM, kind of new ownership structure as well. So this is definitely an exciting young core for kind of the Commanders to rally behind. I definitely think that Drake May could be successful with some of the weapons that they have, namely Terry McLaurin. You got to beef up that offensive line kind of later on in the draft and in free agency, but I definitely think May has the potential and a lot of the traits that you look for in elite number 1 quarterback. I think he is a very, very talented quarterback prospect and someone I would have absolutely no issues taking in the top 5. So definitely think May makes a ton of sense for the Commanders. Then we have the New England Patriots. You could certainly go quarterback, 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 and I think there's a decent chance that that happens with Jaden Daniels at number 3. I can understand that argument. I think Daniels does struggle to see the middle of the field. I do have a first-round grade on Daniels, so at that point, taking him in the top 10, maybe even top 5 isn't crazy, but this Patriots roster is just not in good shape. I mean, you definitely could sign kind of a bridge quarterback, maybe take somebody in the second round, or build around a veteran until next year. You need some talent on this offense. Otherwise, I do think a rookie quarterback is going to come in and really struggle. They have probably the worst wide receiver core in the entire NFL. They don't have a great offensive line. It's still a little shaky. The offensive coordinator spot is still kind of up for grabs for the Patriots as well. So I'm going to go with Marvin Harrison Jr., kind of unlike, the Bears conversation. I think the Patriots just don't have the infrastructure to get a quarterback who I don't think is like a generational type quarterback prospect. Somebody like Caleb Williams or even Drake May, I think has the talent to really elevate the players around him. Jaden Daniels, I do think had a good supporting cast at LSU. We had 2 wide receivers who we'll talk about here today. So I definitely think that surrounding a young quarterback is very important. Daniels wouldn't have that in New England, so getting just the best pure player in this draft and a great playmaker in Marvin Harrison Jr., I think you could certainly understand the argument for going that way. Obviously, that's tough for the Cardinals. You could certainly trade out of this spot for a team that wanted to come up for Jaden Daniels, but I also don't think that Malik Nabers is a big consolation prize. I think he'd be a wide receiver 1 in most drafts. He has really good separation ability. He just showed that ability to get open against SEC corners. He's got a very good athletic build. He's somebody that can be effective after the catch. I just think that, he is going to be a top 10, maybe even top 5 player for me. PFF agrees, has him at number 4. So I think you need to get some playmakers for Kyler Murray. I think Nabers is not a huge step down. Marvin Harrison Jr. is, an elite prospect, but I think Nabers is kind of right there as a great wide receiver prospect. Then at number 5, we have the Chargers. Obviously would have liked to get their hands on either of those 2 receivers, but I think now that Harbaugh is at the helm, they're going to go for the offensive line. At Michigan, he was known for his running game, strong offensive lines, good defenses. Obviously, you have Herbert, so you get Joe Alt and Rashawn Slater to bookend the offensive line. I think that's huge for them. Really kind of gives them an identity of being able to run the ball, being able to keep their franchise quarterback upright. I think that's something that Harbaugh is going to value very, very heavily, and Alt is kind of the best balanced all-around offensive tackle at this point. That leaves the New York Giants on the board, and I am going to go with Jaden Daniels here. I think that, there is a tough conversation with Daniel Jones' contract, but you've got some playmakers there. Obviously, you want to continue to get that number 1 receiver in the building. I think Nabers could be the pick if they don't love the quarterbacks on the board, if he's still there, or maybe even Rome Odunze, something like that. But there is a potential for him to kind of sit behind Daniel Jones, use his mobility once he does get in there, and be an effective player. I think Brian Daboll could do some really nice things for him. So I definitely think Daniels could be a nice fit in New York at number 6. Then we have the Tennessee Titans. This offensive line was a complete disaster. Going to go with Olu Fashanu. I could see them taking Fuaga over Fashanu if, the GM continues to rein Carthen there. If he continues to kind of build the Vrabel type of mentality of that toughness, the offensive line. Obviously, Callahan now in there. He comes from Joe Burrow and that high-octane Bengals passing attack, so I think they wouldn't necessarily mind having an elite pass protector like Fashanu, even if he's not necessarily kind of that super nasty run blocker. I think, regardless, they need to address the offensive line, and for me personally, Fashanu is the best one available. I think it makes a ton of sense for the Titans to go there. And then the Falcons at number 8. Raheem Morris, the new defensive head coach. I think he's going to want to get his guy on the defensive line. This team has struggled to have a consistent pass rush presence, and I think Dallas Turner, he's going to explode at the combine. His numbers are going to be ridiculous, and I think he's going to be the first edge off the board. His traits are next level. He's definitely somebody that I think will go in the top 10 just because of the potential of him. He has some great speed to power, has some nice moves as well. He does need to continue to develop, and I think he can be better against the run game, but I really like what Turner could be as that high potential number 1 edge rusher for the Falcons. That puts us at number 9 to the Chicago Bears. Going to go Rome Odunze out of Washington. You already have DJ Moore. Odunze is a great compliment. He's kind of that downfield ball winner type that I don't think they necessarily have. Moore can do that, but really Odunze makes that his specialty. You have Moore kind of to run as that separator, the underneath type of stuff, and then Odunze to take the big shots too. All of a sudden, Caleb Williams, Cole Kmet, DJ Moore, Rome Odunze, and then you've got some decent running backs by committee as well. I think this is a pretty decent offense and a good infrastructure for Caleb Williams to come into. I think that Matt Eberflus is going to be coaching for his job this year, so you want to get as many playmakers as possible to surround that young quarterback with a lot of talent. At number 10, the Jets, going to go with Fuaga out of Oregon State. I think that you just simply need an offensive tackle, and this was just a major weakness. You're trying to protect 40-something Aaron Rodgers. At this point in his career, you need to keep him upright. You probably don't have too much longer with him at the helm, so you got to keep him upright. This was just a massive weakness for the team, and I definitely think Fuaga, while not necessarily the best when it comes to playing against speed rushers, he definitely is not somebody that you're going to be able to go through. He is an elite level run blocker. I think he'll help open up some holes for Breece Hall as well, so Fuaga definitely somebody that they could use on that offensive line. Then the Vikings at number 11. I am curious to see what a lot of Vikings fans think, but I think J.J. McCarthy is going high in this draft. The traits, the NFL seems to love him. He's got, he's young. He's got some real talent. He just didn't show it off a lot at Michigan. Now, I am nowhere near taking J.J. McCarthy in the top 15, but based on everything that's kind of going around the NFL circles, it certainly sounds like McCarthy could go that high, and I think the Vikings could value him. Maybe you bring back Kirk on a cheap contract. Maybe you find another veteran option, let McCarthy sit for a year or two, and then let him kind of take over and be that distributor, much like he was at Michigan. You have a lot of talent in the wide receiver room. You've got Addison, Jefferson, TJ Hawkinson. You've got some, decent players on that offense. I think McCarthy could continue to be kind of a nice distributor, somebody that just runs the offense effectively. And I think that might be what Kevin O'Connell wants, to get a little cheaper, a little younger at that quarterback spot. I can certainly see them going with McCarthy there. At number 12, going to go with the Denver Broncos, taking Terrion Arnold out of Alabama. He's not my number 1 corner. I was a little bit lower on him. Definitely somebody I want to go back and rewatch. He's super young, very athletic, and he's really good when it comes to his ball skills, his press man, a lot of that stuff that's just pure athleticism, instincts. A lot of that is really good. He needs to clean up some of his technique. He needs to get a little bit stickier, break on routes a little faster, but the potential is through the roof with Terrion Arnold, and definitely, if you could have him as a corner 2 next to Pat Surtain, that could be a great secondary. Corner 2 has been a liability for them, so I could certainly see them going with Arnold at that number 12 slot. We now have the Raiders up next, And this one is going to be an interesting one. Byron Murphy out of Texas has been somebody that has climbed up a lot of draft boards recently. Watched him and I was very impressed. He's somebody that, kind of can play that one tech. He's very good at digging in against double teams. He can two gap. He can be really effective, but he was also a really, really good pass rusher as well. Daniel Jeremiah had him going number 11 to the Vikings in his most recent mock draft. So I definitely think there is some rumblings about this in NFL circles that Byron Murphy could go a lot higher than people think. The interior of this Raiders defense has been a mess for a long time, and getting some more talent on that defensive line that can be both effective in the run and the passing game could be very, very interesting for this defense. At number 14, the New Orleans Saints. I've mocked this before, but I think the fit makes a lot of sense. Jared Verse out of Florida State. Heavy-handed, definitely one of those bigger edges that the Saints tend to like. Dennis Allen's still there, so they still have that same philosophy. I do think that he is somebody that can come in and be effective right away. He's not somebody I expect to get 10 sacks his rookie year, but I think he'll be a consistent 6 to 8 sack guy. Really good run defender, high energy player. Has one of the coolest stories coming out of Albany. Transferred to Florida State, was really effective. So definitely think he is somebody that could be really good for the Saints team. That puts the Indianapolis Colts up on the clock at number 15. Done this before as well, but I really like Brock Bowers in this slot. It just makes a lot of sense for a team that has some weapons. You want to get somebody for your young quarterback over the middle of the field. Kind of one of those age-old tropes is your best quarterback's best friend is a tight end or a weapon over the middle. I think Bowers is going to be so effective in that role for this offense with Shane Steichen. He's somebody so effective after the catch. He's a good route runner. He dominated since he was a true freshman at Georgia, so I think he has all the talent in the world. He's definitely a top 8, top 5 player in this draft. It's just about positional value and where he'll kind of slot in there. So going to go with Bowers at number 15. Then at number 16 for the Seahawks, I think Troy Fontenot out of Washington, kind of keep that hometown kid in the States there. Fontenot has 5-position versatility on the offensive line. I think his best spot is going to be guard, which I think the Seahawks could certainly stand to upgrade, but if he can displace Abraham Lucas at right tackle, I definitely think that's a possibility. You could play him at center. You could play him anywhere on that offensive line. Just allows you to get your best 5 out there. Like I said, I think he's going to be a guard in the NFL. I think that's one of the biggest needs on this Seattle team, so I could certainly see them going with Fontenot, and I think that would be a very, very good pick for them. And then at 17, we have the Jacksonville Jaguars, and I think there is a good chance that they take a wide receiver, Brian Thomas Jr., somebody that I think would fit really well. Trevor Lawrence is very good when it comes to deep passes. They need to unlock that explosive passing game. Calvin Ridley really was kind of brought in to do that, and he wasn't able to do so. If they move on from him, they get better picks, essentially. They don't lose a second rounder, that they have to lose a third rounder instead. So there is definitely incentive to let Calvin Ridley walk. You could get somebody like Brian Thomas Jr., who is a true explosive athlete, somebody after the catch that could be really effective. He has great releases, still very young and kind of learning how to be a true technician at that wide receiver spot, but he has all the tools to be a downfield burner, and I could see the Jaguars taking somebody like him with the 17th pick there. Then the Cincinnati Bengals up next. A couple of options. You could certainly take Jazon Newton, fill that defensive tackle role. There's some good corners on the board as well, but at the end of the day, you got to protect Joe Burrow. Jonah Williams is walking, most likely in free agency. There's a couple of good right tackles on the board. You've got J.C. Latham and Amarius Mims. I'm going to go with Latham here. They kind of tend to like those big, powerful run blockers, and Latham is pretty light on his feet for being like 360 pounds as well. He does have some technique issues that he can continue to clean up, but he is not somebody you're going to easily go through. He has really solid movement ability for his size and is just kind of a really strong, powerful player at that right tackle spot. Just fits in very nicely with the Bengals' philosophy and a lot of the things that they look to do on offense, and fills a huge need for them as well. The Rams at number 19, going to go with Laiatu Latu, another local guy. He is, I think, the most productive edge rusher. If there was no injury concerns, I think he should be a top 10 pick. Maybe has some limited athleticism. He's definitely not as explosive as a guy like Dallas Turner. Maybe not as strong as Jared Verse, but when it comes to just the technique and the understanding of how to play the position, I think Latu's the best of the three of them. He's just so polished. I think he's going to be very productive from day one. The Rams would give him a chance to potentially start outside of, Byron Young. They've got players there, but I definitely think Latu could step in and be a starter immediately and be a very, very nice player for them. At number 20, we have the Pittsburgh Steelers. Also curious to see what Steelers fans think of this. Gonna go with Bo Nix out of Oregon, and it sounds like Nix is going to be a first-round pick. I am not sure that I would take him in the first round. I think he has a little bit of a limited ceiling, but he operates offenses very effectively. He's pinpoint accurate. He's very good on getting the ball on time, on target, where it needs to go. I think he's kind of similar to Kenny Pickett in some of those ways, and I think he has some of the same deficiencies, but clearly the Steelers do not believe in Kenny Pickett. If you are starting Mason Rudolph in a playoff game over your first-round pick in his second year, when they're both healthy, you do not trust Kenny Pickett to operate the offense and be the future of this franchise. So, wouldn't surprise me at all if they take a swing at quarterback. I think Bo Nix could be in the range for them to do so, and I definitely think that he could kind of be one of those players that they have their eyes on. Then the Dolphins at 21, going to go with Amarius Mims out of Georgia. He's a raw player, just doesn't have a lot of starting experience, but he has insane physical ability. He's super long, super athletic, definitely somebody that the Dolphins could mold into being a really good tackle for them. Yeah, they've just dealt with so many injuries on the offensive line. Armstead, of course, is just an injury machine. You might lose some guys in free agency as well. You could put Mims at guard and then kick him out to tackle. There's just a lot of options, and I definitely think that at this point, they need to address the offensive line. Mims is by far, to me, the most talented guy left on the board, so wouldn't be surprised at all to see the Dolphins go to him. Then we have the Eagles at 22. Nate Wiggins is too good to pass up here. I think he's the best maybe pure cover corner in this draft. Just line him up against one player and say, don't let him catch the ball. I think Wiggins might be the best at doing that in this entire class. I really, really like him. James Bradbury was completely cooked this year. He was terrible down the stretch, and they need to address the corner position. They are very old there, and they need some help. I know they have some young guys, but I definitely think you need high-end talent, and Wiggins is very, very good, and the fact that he's still on the board here is a little bit surprising, so I could definitely see the Eagles taking him at this spot. The Texans up next, going to go with Jerzon Newton out of Illinois. He's just kind of that undersized defensive three-tech that could be really effective in a D'Amico Ryans scheme. I think that he's somebody that you ask him to penetrate a gap, you ask him to go one-on-one against really any guard, he is going to beat that guy. He is just so quick, elusive, effective. He has great pass rush moves. He is just a menace on the interior, and if you let D'Amico Ryans get his hands on a guy this talented, I think he could absolutely get the most out of him. He reminds me a little bit of Kalijah Kancey from last year, that explosive, penetrating three-tech with pass rush upside that may not be a super dominant run defender. I think he's a little bit less of an explosive athlete than Kancey, but I think he's a better run defender as well. So I think he could go in a similar range, 23 to the Texans there. And then we have the Dallas Cowboys up next. I think they can continue to improve the offensive line. I think they value athleticism at the offensive line spot. There's no one more athletic than Tyler Guyton out of Oklahoma. He definitely has some technique issues that he can continue to clean up. But if you're looking at just A-plus athletes at the offensive tackle spot, I think Guyton is really the guy in this draft. He's so athletic. He's somebody that can certainly be a tackle just when it comes to his ability to cover space, get into his kick slides, get width. He is just so dynamic, and they have had a great kind of run developing offensive linemen. So I think getting Guyton, play him on the right side, and hopefully you don't have to see Terrence Steele too much anymore. You can play him on the interior. There's just a lot of options. This Dallas offensive line needs to get a little bit better, and I think he could certainly help with that there. Then the Packers at 25, I think they'd run in this card for Cooper DeJean. He can play safety, he can play slot corner, he can play outside corner. I think he is, the best defensive back in this draft. He's just so versatile. I think he can play so many different roles, but he's just such a sticky, good athlete with amazing ball skills as well. I think people just kind of put him into that safety category, even though he can play everywhere. He's a great run defender. I truly just think he is a special talent. To get him at 25 would be an absolute steal for the Packers, and he could just fit so many different roles for this team. At the Buccaneers at number 26, going to go with Kool-Aid McKinstry. Another guy that it's pretty surprising that he's there. I think this corner class has turned out to be a really pretty good class, and there's just a lot of guys. I think McKinstry doesn't necessarily have that A-plus athleticism. It's good, and he is the best just pure press man corner in this class. He does his job on a very reliable basis. I think he has a very high floor, which is hard to find in a corner. I think there's not a lot he does wrong. It's just, he's not necessarily got the elite ball skills. He's not somebody that, is super good when it comes to flipping his hips and turning in tight angles. But, if you want him to press a guy downfield, he will absolutely press and run with that guy, and he can certainly be very effective. The corners for Tampa Bay were a little bit down this year, so I think this is just value getting McKinstry at this point. Then we have the Cardinals, and another corner off the board. There's certainly been a run here. I think Quinyon Mitchell out of Toledo is somebody that is certainly going to get first-round looks. He had insane ball production at Toledo, had insane PFF coverage grades. Obviously wasn't going against top-end talent, but there are a lot of guys that are kind of putting Mitchell higher and higher on their draft boards. I definitely think he could sneak into this. He reminds me a little bit of Tariq Woolen, just his ball skills, his ability to turn and run. He is a little bit taller, but man, he just kind of breaks on those routes on off coverage really effectively. I think he could play his way into this conversation for the first round, and getting Mitchell at the end of the first for the Cardinals, I think could be a very, very interesting pick. Then we have the Bills at 28. Going to go with Troy Franklin. Much kind of like Brian Thomas. He's that speedster. He's somebody that's a downfield threat. Was very effective for Bo Nix. Had a lot of production at Oregon. And, I just think that they need somebody else to replace that Gabe Davis role that, he just has not been able to turn into a player for them. You got to continue to build up this offense. We'll kind of see if it continues to look like it has the past couple of years. They just cannot get over the hump, and I think adding another pass catcher might be the answer to that. They just need to figure out something on offense, and I think getting another weapon in the room is never a bad idea with Troy Franklin in that Gabe Davis role. For the Lions up next at 29, certainly something that they need to address the corner position. I am a huge fan of Kamari Lassiter. He doesn't necessarily have the top-end athleticism, but if you want a guy that will just be in the right place at the right time, he's such a competitor. He's somebody that just, fits the Lions culture, it seems like, to a T. Kamari Lassiter is your guy. I think he is just such an underrated player in this class. Just has all of the smarts, the instincts, the understanding. I think that he can be a good zone and man corner. He's just in the right place at the right time, and truly is a competitor. He needs to improve his ball skills, but I think he just fits the mold of a Detroit Lion cornerback, and they need to address that position. So makes a lot of sense to me there. Then at pick 30, going to go with Chop Robinson, and PFF is a little bit lower on Robinson than I think the NFL will be, just due to his insane explosiveness. Robinson is a guy that can bend the edge like really no other in this class. His first step and just ability to beat a tackle to a spot is really impressive. And I think the Ravens could continue to add to this pass rush that was really, really effective, but, just continue to get guys in there that can get after the quarterback, be effective, especially in a conference with Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen and Joe Burrow and all of these guys that you have to beat in the playoffs. You got to get pressure on them, and Chop Robinson could help do that. Then the two teams that are left in this NFL season, we have the 49ers and the Chiefs. For the Chiefs, we're going to go with Keon Coleman. He is a very interesting contested catch receiver, was considered by most to be a top 15 pick for a while, and then kind of fell off, wasn't considered to be that highly regarded. He just doesn't get a ton of separation, but he's a ball winner, deep threat that they have needed in Kansas City for a while, has really good contested catch ability, and catches with his hands effectively as well. So I think Coleman would be a very nice pick for this Chiefs team. And then the final pick of the first round for the San Francisco 49ers, I'm going to go with Ennis Rakestraw out of Missouri. He's somebody that is super athletic. He has missed some time due to injury, but definitely somebody that I could see being in the first round as well. Very, very dynamic, fun player. They continue to upgrade that corner position, and I definitely think he makes a lot of sense for this 49ers team as well. That is going to do it for my 2024 NFL mock draft. We only have one more game before draft season is in full swing. Let me know what you thought about this mock draft down below in the comments. If you like this kind of video as well, please hit the subscribe button down below, and while you're down there, hit the like button as well. Just a free and easy way to let me know that you like this kind of video, to support the channel, and let me know that you want to see more videos just like this. Thank you so much for watching. I will catch you in the next one.